Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Go Get It podcast with Rob Butler. This week's guest, Rebecca Kacaba, is the co-founder and CEO of DealMaker. DealMaker is a company that's making it more accessible to individuals to invest in the private market space. She's going to bring us up to speed on what she's doing right now, her vision for the development of the business, and share the three most important things that someone looking to progress their career should be thinking about along the way. So stick with us and let's go get it. Let's go. Let's get it. So I know you from academics through our ski careers. What is probably your earlier memory or first memories of where we might have overlapped?
Yeah, so I was wondering if you were going to take it back to skiing, but that's my first memories when we were both ski racing competitively and we were on the same team. And we had a great coach who was pushing us hard to succeed. And we had some really fun trips to, I don't know if I remember that, Jay Peak, Vermont, probably some of those
Sounds
training
cold.
camps.
I remember cold.
Yeah. Yeah. And those were the days when I was trying to, figure out how to get some speed and get my skis on edge. And you were way ahead of me and knew how to do it and giving me tips and tricks.
I did? Well, listen, if that's true, then that's amazing. I don't know if I did the tips and tricks, but I'm sure we had a good time at some of these adventures that we went on. And a number of the people that we've been able to interview for the Go Get It podcast so far do have very strong memories of what that like their ski careers or just getting to build out their network at a very young age. And I think that is part and parcel of what comes through in this Go Get It podcast, the networking piece and how important that can be to just meet as many people as you can. And part of it, like it wasn't intentional probably at the time, but through osmosis and just exposure, it ended up being a lot like that. And I'll be curious to know if that helped influence where you are today.
Of course, for sure it did. But like hot tip for the listeners that Rob's never going to tell you is that he was a fantastic, successful, competitive ski racer back in the day. And he probably doesn't brag about that enough. So
no, we don't
you
talk
heard
about
it
that.
Here first.
Thank
Rob
you.
Butler, look up his ski results. He was phenomenal, helped me along the way. So for sure, listen, that's fun memories that we both have. And that networking aspect is really important in everything that you do. And I think my co-founder and I have a saying that because we've worked together now in a number of places, we always want to leave the place better than we found it. So, implementing new solutions that make our customers' lives better, our coworkers' lives better, pushing an organization forward, a mantra that we started almost 15 years ago when we started working together was just do what you can to leave the place better than you found it.
I didn't realize the connection and history between you and your coworker. So just to be clear, Rebecca Kacaba, the co-founder of DealMaker. So that business, and we'll talk a little bit about what that is today and how you define it. But also, now that you've added that to the mix in terms of having worked with somebody and being able to build that trust along the way, that's an incredibly difficult relationship to manage. So we'll probably touch upon that as well. So in that vein, when you were working through undergrad and maybe into graduate school, where we also overlap coincidentally, what were you thinking then? Were you always of the mindset that I want to be an entrepreneur, or was it I'm studying law at this time or an MBA, or maybe talk to us a little bit about what that looked like and where your head was at?
I like to joke in my family that you have to get a law degree and then you can decide what you want to do. So I come from a family of lawyers. Both my sisters are lawyers. My father's a lawyer. My uncle was a judge. So it was a bit of a career path for us. And I was always very interested in business. And I come from a very entrepreneurial background. My father started multiple businesses that it was his opinion that you had kids to help you in business and in the family business. So that was a mentality that I grew up with that I think has been very important because learning to get out there and do cold sales, despite your age, despite not having a lot of experience in an industry was something that I was pushed to do at an early age. And I think that serves people well. I always like to say cold sales are the best training ground anyone can have.
Yeah, and it's funny, a lot of the interviews we've done to this point, the term sales has a bit of a stigma to it. And I think when you're a student and you're associated with, oh, you'd be a good salesperson, or have you ever thought about sales? The reaction you might get from somebody that hasn't thought that through or doesn't have a real, maybe true representation of what that could mean. Because I'd argue that the most successful people that I've worked with or been surrounded by, regardless of the field that they're in, it's their actual ability to connect with others, to present well, to be able to sell themselves, essentially, whether they're lawyers, accountants, tradespeople. It's irrelevant, I think, in terms of what it is. But if you're going to grow the business and become incredibly successful in whatever it is, I think that's a great thing to keep in mind. The sales piece, that is.
I think you're right. I always say life is sales. And if you look at starting a business, what I've been doing since 2018, every single aspect of it is sales. You know, when you have really just a hope and a dream and you have to convince people to work with you on it and come along for the ride, that's sales. You're communicating a vision. You're giving them assurance that you're going to be successful and convincing them to take a little leap of faith with you and stake their livelihood on it. Getting investors is sales, and getting revenue, of course, is sales. And I think you're right, Rob. Sales encompasses so many things. The most successful salespeople are people that understand and form that human connection. And we can dive into AI and where that's going in the world. But that human connection on top of AI is always going to be the key piece. The people that can understand the person they're talking to and help solve problems for them and help get them comfortable that this solution they have is the right solution.
So you look at, and I'm going to build your ego now. So seeing, doesn't matter what media or publication in the business field, LinkedIn. I mean, you're down in Washington. I need to know what you're doing down there. I think the awards you've actually come across, I mean, the speed with which DealMaker has evolved. Can you talk to us about, one, how you've done that, but two, like what is that business and the way you want us to perceive what DealMaker is in a nutshell?
Yeah, the way I want people to understand the impact of DealMaker on the world is a few years from now, I want you to walk into your local grocery store and pick up a bag of chips that you love and turn the package over and scan a QR code and become an investor in that brand. So I want people to move through the world owning the brands that they love. And I think in today's day and age, there's a lot of community building happening on the internet, and people are viewing the things that are of interest to them. And a lot of the times that's the brands that they consume or the things that they want to happen in the world. Maybe it's lithium extraction to build EV cars. They want to be an owner in a company like that because they want to see the world have a company like that. And so that's really what we do, is help founders get capital for their dreams and to build their vision by building an online community of supporters who are their investors. And so those supporters and investors might help them with organic social posts. They, of course, might help them with their investment dollars, but they just help champion a brand and help it succeed. So it's a new and innovative form of capital that is really taking off in America. And that's part of what I was doing in Washington, is talking to Congress and the Senate about some of the new bills that they're passing and how we can continue to expand on this new and exciting source of capital for people.
How did you find the response was? What's it like sitting in Congress? Like, is that one of the more intimidating settings you've been in? I know, being a lawyer and working in front of, very successful people, you've done lots of that, but is that something totally different or departure from what you're used to?
It is. It's a pretty big departure. It's definitely more nerve-wracking than most of the things I've done. And it's a lot of fun. It's a really exciting conversation to be a part of the conversation. I'm always amazed when I meet with the staffers there, how knowledgeable they are on the industry, how knowledgeable they are on the legislation, and how deeply they're thinking about these things. So it's always a complete pleasure to go and be able to have that conversation with them as the people who are implementing the rules that they're developing. It really, DealMaker is helping American businesses and connecting them with American investors. So by all intents and purposes, that activity is primarily focused in the US.
How many people do what you would describe as something similar to yourself, and where did the actual idea come from? I mean, I recognize you describe it now, and it's invigorating and it sounds exciting, and I get it within 2 minutes of you explaining it. But I'm just kind of curious, where did you see the gap in the marketplace where you're like, I'm going to go do that?
I was practicing law and I saw my clients were unhappy with the capital raising process. It was paper-based, it was cumbersome, and it became obvious to myself and my co-founder that technology could solve that problem. And capital markets is something I've been passionate about. I think it's where all of the activity that drives economic growth comes from. So if you want to have a macro impact, I was always drawn to the capital markets because participating there is how you can have an outsized impact on the world. And I want to come back to the question that you asked about how to achieve fast results, because I think that is really important to people who are coming out of school and thinking about what they should do. You know, if I had it over, I would say take risks early and often. I stayed in law for a very long time because I really did enjoy it and I loved the people that I was working with. But if you come out of school, I think that's a perfect time to take a risk. There's no such thing as failure. I took the risk when I had 2 small children and my husband was doing his MBA and working full time. So there's no bad time to take a risk. Let me tell you, there couldn't be a worse time and a more busy time than that. But I think it's important to take risks early, take them often. There's no such thing as failure. And I always say, I make 5 bets and I expect 4 of them to fail. And then you lean into the one that's working. So you really can't see failure as a barrier or even as failure. It's just learning. And as long as you're ongoing learning and growing, you'll hit upon the right thing to lean into. But if you're not trying, you're not making those 5 bets and then you'll never get there.
Did you ever come up against a situation where you've heard the phrase paralysis by analysis or through analysis? Do you find yourself ever having to deal with that or with people around you, or are you able to overcome that and effectively go get it and just kind of have the confidence to go after whatever it is, despite there being measured risk? Are you comfortable with that, or has that evolved over time?
We are very comfortable with that at DealMaker, making quick decisions, making small measured bets, learning from them, and then leaning into what's working. So I would say when new people join the company, we're about 120 people right now, and we're scaling up to 200 this year. It is something that oftentimes they have to learn because they're used to being a little bit slower in their decision making. And as we've grown as a business, we have slowed down and tried to do more analysis than always relying on gut instinct. There's a time and place in a business's evolution for everything. But I do think, especially when you're in the early days, you can do analysis, you can write a business plan, but there's nothing that can replace just getting out there and learning and figuring out what works and what doesn't. Even in building a product, I always say you need to take the feedback of your paying customers. So you've got to get a product up and shipped and in the hands of users, and then get them to pay you something for it, for their feedback to be real. Because everybody will tell you something else that you should build hypothetically, but are people willing to pay you for it? That's the measure of a real technology product.
And kind of a departure from that last question, your co-head that you work with, you said 15 years, I think, that you've been working together. I don't actually know them, but your personalities or your skill sets or your superpowers, as I sometimes call them, are they similar, or do you guys bring something totally different to the table?
I would say that ongoing aspiration for learning and striving to be better. I think when you have co-founders that are pushing the boundaries of what's possible, that creates a good natural tension that a business can use as an accelerant to succeed. A lot of people told us you could never build a technology company without a technical co-founder. And that's not true. We stand here today. We have a phenomenal CTO who runs an amazing engineering organization. And I'm so proud to work with all of them.
I love that comment. I don't even know how to ask the next question other than if you had 10 people that you were looking to get their opinion on something you were considering working on, how many of them would default to a negative response versus, yeah, that's really good, you should run with that? And I have my own opinion. I'm just curious. Have you ever thought about that and who you use as either sounding boards or mentors in a certain way?
I do think that's the right question, Rob, because I think surrounding yourself with positivity and encouragement is one of the keys to success. And so I would not say that there are a lot of people in my network who would say, no, that's not possible. And
Right.
that's intentional.
I think that's amazing. And I think without defining it or highlighting it for somebody, you can find yourself in a situation where the people you rely on will convince you not to do something, because there's always a reason not to do it. That's easy to do. But can you deal with the worst case scenarios is how I like to reframe it sometimes. So you could apply that to building a business, buying a house, whatever it might be. But can you live with the worst case scenario? And I think if more often than not you can, then there is justification to actually take a leap of faith and kind of run with it is one of the things. I think it's my grandfather probably that taught me that, but it stuck with me. So,
Yeah. Rob,
so-
something my co-founder often says as well is people forget that there's risk in the status quo. Like they will allow themselves to be convinced by someone that doing something is a bigger risk, but actually not doing something also has risk, especially in today's AI era, right? If you're not consistently learning and growing and figuring out how to use AI to make your own skill set stronger, there's a huge risk of that in becoming redundant in the workforce today. So there's things like that natural evolution just you should be doing to keep status quo.
I think it's a great reminder. And you talked about learning, and you and your co-partner, that's what you're always looking for, and trying to grab something new that you may not be aware of or not thinking about. It pushes the boundaries that way. But to proactively do it, there's something to be said for that. I mean, some people, sure, maybe that's their default mode and they're always inquisitive. But for those that aren't, it doesn't mean you can't be. And it just takes a little bit of an effort and proactive effort to make sure you put yourself out of your comfort zone to be able to learn in areas that you're maybe not as well versed in. Okay, I could literally go for hours with this, so I'm going to cut it here because what I need to do is move into the body of the Go Get It podcast. So Rebecca, in no particular order, what are the 3 things you'd recommend somebody coming out of either school or maybe somebody that's halfway through their career? Maybe they feel like they're stuck in a rut, or they've always flirted with the idea of changing their career choices. What would be the 3 most important things that you'd share with that audience?
I would say number 1, take risks early and often. Number 2, remember there's no such thing as failure. Number 3, you own your own success and your future. And we haven't talked about that third one yet, but I see a lot of founders raising capital on our platform. And without a doubt, the ones that are the most successful are the ones that own their outcomes and take accountability and drive things forward. They're not waiting for other people to give them feedback. They're the ones that are out there that are making things happen.
So 2 and 3, only because I want to revisit them. Failure is good, or being able to learn from your mistakes. Give me an example, if you're comfortable, with something that you look back on and you said, I'm really glad I did do that, but that was not either the right decision, or the timing was wrong, or those were the right or wrong people that you may be connected with. Can you give me an example of that?
Yeah. A recent example I can think of is a friend of mine who started her own business, and she set up a partnership in that where she was kind of getting taken advantage of a little bit in the way that the deal got negotiated. And she was really beating herself up over it and thinking about how much money that had cost her. And I said to her, look, I think the way you're thinking about it is the wrong way to think about it. Of course, you're going to make mistakes in business. So you've got to shift your perspective. I can give her a number of examples of new business lines that I've started that we ended up not pursuing, and was money wasted or not wasted. If you learn something that ultimately makes the business better, if you shift your perspective to thinking about it that way, then a failure is not a failure. It's just a learning. And so if you learn something throughout the course of your business career, you're going to keep getting sharper. You're going to keep getting better. You're going to keep experimenting. Studies will show those are the businesses that will accelerate and succeed the quickest over time.
I think I've heard somebody say, or maybe it was even one of the people we interviewed, that fail quickly was something else. Does that make any sense, or have you heard of that before?
Yeah, fail fast for sure. We constantly revisit our decisions and say, is this, we call them, bets or hypothesis internally, is the hypothesis playing out at first sign? If it's not, then you've got to shut it down, make a decision and move on. And sometimes where businesses get complacent or they're afraid to make that decision, but not making that decision is what kills you. So we've got to continue to force people to make those calls and have the confidence to make those calls.
And the failure piece, when you're reviewing something as you described, do you have a set of people that you have trusted over a number of years as really good objective sounding boards for you, or someone that's maybe not in the same industry, but just built a business similar to yours as far as growth trajectory that you lean on? Is there anything like that when you're reviewing the failure or success piece?
Yeah, we have a strong network of advisors. I'm a big believer in ongoing learning. So being able to ask questions of all of our advisors and investors has been a huge benefit for me. And, our management team as well is very involved in the decisions that we're making as a business and learning from the data that's available to us. I found there's no replacement for the management team who are in the business and living and breathing it every day.
And then point 3, you talk about take accountability. Can you just go a little bit deeper? I feel like the first 2 we kind of touched upon unintentionally, but the third one in particular, what do you mean by that, taking accountability?
I think sometimes, look, you're going to come up against different challenges. And if you always approach them with a mindset or perspective of, I have options here, sometimes the options have lots of negatives associated with them, but you can always control the outcome and the destiny. If you approach things with that mindset, then you will always, push the boulder up the hill, which is a phrase one of our customers I was interviewing in LA 2 weeks ago said, you're responsible for setting the momentum and you're the one that's pushing the boulder up the hill. And so if you're taking accountability for outcomes, you're always going to be the one creating that momentum, which ultimately leads to success. So if you're waiting for other people, it's just, you're not going to be able to generate that same momentum and velocity for the business. So he takes the same approach as I do. When you're running a path, say you're raising investment, you're not just waiting for one person, you're approaching many potential investors. You're testing out your story here, over here. Maybe you're talking to VC, maybe you're looking at retail capital, maybe you're talking to a broker as well. You're constantly doing as much as you can to push that boulder up the hill.
You'd mentioned that you have roughly 150 employees now at DealMaker. Is that correct?
That's right.
I would think that the accountability piece, and here's where I'm going with this, if you live by that mantra, it's probably a great way to set the tone for the rest of the group. So when they see a leader, rather than always telling them what they need to do, actually doing it themselves and kind of demonstrating a particular behavior, in this case, just responsibility, accountability, and driving or pushing that boulder up the hill, as you suggested, there's got to be something to be said to be able to lead a team consistently doing that, because I don't know, I shouldn't, that's a leading question, but that's how I would interpret it. If I'm thinking about someone that I'm reporting to each day and you want to have some belief in what it is that they're working toward, if they can do it better than I can, there's something there where it's, you don't even have to tell me to do it. I just, through osmosis and through motivation, self-motivation, I'll follow their lead. Have you found that to be the case? And yes, that's a leading question.
Yes, absolutely. But I think it hits on the right point, right? Like for us, leaders have to be able to execute as well as have vision. And you can't only do one or the other. You have to be able to carry both. Where DealMaker is at today in a growth stage, that modeling behavior, that got me a certain distance of it. But now I have found it's not enough. I have to be able to set up structures that allow people to have that accountability, which is a different phase of growth, which is exciting. That's what's fun about a growth company, is you're always learning and changing things. And that's where we are today, where the structures matter as much as the modeling.
And then where you're at with DealMaker, you look out 5 years, 10, 15. What do you hope, and what would the ultimate goal be for you in 10 years or 15 years time?
For me, it would be everybody owning the brands that they love, investing, becoming a mainstream part of people's everyday lives. So you're watching Netflix and you invest in that show for season 2 to happen. And all of this is connected into wallets, and people are having perks in the companies, and people are forming a really integral part of the companies and the brands that they love. I think it's very clear to me that that's where the world is going. And I want DealMaker to be the Kleenex of the category, where everybody knows that that happens through the DealMaker platform. So, it's often said that people underestimate what they can accomplish in 10 years and they overestimate what they can accomplish in 3 years. And so I think we try to hedge that and make sure that the vision is growing as fast as we think we can accomplish it. Because of course, with AI, we have a huge accelerant on our hands that can rapidly advance the rate at which we can do this.
And the next question, I don't know that it makes it to the final cut, but now I'm kind of curious, like, does that mean, or do you foresee yourself working with some of the bigger banks across North America where it becomes an extended part of their investment platform where, I don't know, like just...
It could be. I try to keep, the specifics of it. We're very open to it. The market is rapidly evolving, especially with crypto companies entering the fold. So that it very much could take shape that way. That's the exciting part. We'll find out.
Cool. Honestly, in my real life, I've actually learned a ton already, because I can immediately, knowing the client base that I work with, I can see a number of different applications where that's a very saleable story. And it wouldn't be a huge departure from what clients are used to now. Only the younger generations coming up that are maybe not as loyal to their advisors or as loyal to their financial planners, they're looking to find the next best thing, not just investment, but just the actual experience and how they do it. Do I need to drive to a downtown office in a stuffy setting and talk about my retirement portfolio? Or can I go onto my phone and do what you're describing? I mean, immediately when you say it, I totally understand it. So it sounds amazing. I think you're going to crush it, which you already are, but I wish you all the best in everything you're going to do over the next, 3 to 10 years. The 3, I'm not going to overestimate. I think you are going to be amazing in terms of what you're able to accomplish in that short time frame. So thanks very much for joining us today, Rebecca. And any last thoughts for the group?
Thanks for having me. And I just want to reiterate, take risks early and often. There's no such thing as failure.
Powerful. Love it. Great closing message. And thanks very much for joining us today.
Okay, awesome. Thanks for having me. Great to catch up.
Let's go. Hey, this is Rob Butler on the Go Get It podcast. Thanks very much for joining us today. We appreciate you listening to what it is we can bring to your career evolution. And if you liked our guest, feel free to 1, follow us, and 2, put a question in the reel, and hopefully our interviewee can respond to that question directly. With that, I'd like to encourage you to join us on next week's edition on the Go Get It podcast. Thanks again.